Okay, so let's go over the agenda. Are there any changes or modifications to the agenda?
Do you have the agenda that has a section marked new under 7D?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, that's the agenda that I recommend.
Well, I move we approve the agenda.
Great. I guess it's just two of us.
Yeah.
So I'll second. So there's a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And for the public, I'd also like to share that Commissioner Grant is not attending today, our commission meeting. So let's move on to the consent agenda. And that is the approval of the minutes for our last regular meeting on September 26th and the claims for October 10th. Is there any discussion?
I don't have any questions. I usually ask prior to the meeting.
Not here either. So,
Oh, well, I move we approve the consent agenda.
okay, I second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Let's move on to public comment. I see no one in the room at present. Is there anybody online who'd like to make a comment? Please raise your hand. I can't see the
Yeah.
participants.
Sorry, there's no one.
There's no hands raised.
Okay, great. Okay, let's move on to the general manager's report.
So I really only have one thing I'd like to talk to you guys about today. I mean, I talk to you about all kinds of stuff, but I want to limit the discussion a little bit. And talk about geothermal. You know, we're proceeding down multiple paths around geothermal. And one of the issues that's really profound is the amount of permitting and studies and, you know, the EIS and then you've got the SEPA NEPA issues over and over and over as you do different parts of this. We're looking at ways to help streamline that. And John found some legislation that was passed that's directing the Department of Ecology to do something. And we want them to change that a little bit. I'd like to turn it over to John to talk a little bit about that.
So I'll pass out first the legislation to you. This was in gross second substitute House Bill 1216 for the Clean Energy Project Siting Act. And it did a number of things, but what jumped out was the effort to try to streamline some of the environmental review and permit coordinating. The act speaks broadly about clean energy in a lot of respects, and then it says all of a sudden that they want to have a coordinated permit process, et cetera, et cetera. Then it goes to having a programmatic SEPA done for two specific types of projects: utility scale solar and onshore wind projects. And Ecology's already issued voluminous documents on, and you can find these on the website, but a voluminous document on the scoping of both projects. And under the SEPA process, what happens is if you're going to do an EIS, you describe the project, summarize the areas you're going to study and analyze, and then you circulate that for comments on the scope of the EIS. And a programmatic EIS is not a site-specific or project-specific environmental impact statement. It broadly reviews the impacts of a type of project without consideration of siting. So the legislature directed Ecology to do those two programmatic EISs with the thought that that can streamline later the actual permitting of utility scale solar or onshore wind. There's no reference to geothermal or other type of clean energy projects in the legislation. So when you do an EIS, you look at an alternative analysis. No action alternative required, and then you look at an alternative, which might be the proposal or other proposals. So Ecology in each instance has done, you know, the utility scale solar is the size of the project as the alternatives. And I'm suggesting we, for a variety of reasons, the PUD submit a letter that to broaden the scope of the analysis to look at other types of renewable energy that are clean, and specifically geothermal. Given that there wasn't any appropriation for a third EIS, This is an avenue to try to get into this from the side, see if ecology will expand the scope of the alternatives analysis to include geothermal. But if not, it also sets the stage to go to the legislature this winter to say, add a programmatic EIS for other types of clean energy projects, specifically geothermal, and also may in the interim. If we get some resistance from ecology, we can go to legislature and go to the Department of Ecology Director, Governor's office, say, would you change your position so we don't have to go back to legislature and move this along quickly. We will still have to go through SEPA. We still have to go through NEPA at the end of the day. I found in the BLM, Bureau of Land Management, did a programmatic EIS on geothermal projects in early 2000s, 2008, 17 different sites or lease for leasing purposes around the Western United States, including what appears these sites. So there is some data already. It's 15 years old, but some data of analysis already. So we're going to submit, we want to let you know this, we're going to submit this letter to the, in response to scoping. It's due towards the end of the month. And then we'll probably develop some talking points for you to speak with the elected officials of the state, include our letter, legislation we handed out here, and talk about how they might amend the legislation if we don't get a positive response from ecology. But first, to press ecology to include these alternatives. It'll buy some time, it'll shorten some of the permitting timing and let us focus when we go through the EIS just about the localized impacts and not broader impacts of geothermal projects in general.
So John, there was one other thought that occurred to me last night. Sorry, we have not had a chance to discuss this, but I suspect that given the timing of the comments they're collecting right now from ecology, that the legislature will already be started before they release any kind of public answer. So
maybe
I would just suggest that we need to pursue both avenues in parallel.
agree.
Yeah, and that was going to be my question, is how fast we expect an answer from ecology.
We might get lucky.
They may not have many comments on the scope. Maybe they could be 5, you know, and so okay, then it's a political question where they expand it. And that's where, when I think, you know, after we send this out the next week, we need to tee the commission up to go speak with Sharon Shoemake, Alex Ramel, and others and say, listen, we want you to press ecology to expand the scope now, not wait for you to have your legislative amendment. But if you're forced that direction, take this action early, push this through early. And I don't know why there would be resistance except for a budgetary purpose. But if you're really looking at the values that you've expressed about having clean energy production in Whatcom County, then I think the governor would support it. So would others.
So I've been over this letter with John a couple of times, and I fully support it as written. And I recommend that we direct John to send this off, and then beginning next week, start talking to the representatives and start moving.
Candidly, I don't think this is something the commission formally has to take an action on. This is something that, you know, given your direction in the past about pursuing geothermal, this is consistent with that. Chris can pursue this on his own independence, but we felt, you know, we wanted to keep you informed early because we're going to be having political asks for you.
Great. Send the letter.
I'll have a
Okay.
few comments. So, I haven't had a chance to review the last year's legislation. But in the quick glancing I've just done, there's a couple of places in the bill which it refers to lots of other renewable energy projects. And I've seen no reference, as you said, to geothermal, but I've seen reference to lots of other things, including renewable fuels, including energy storage. So it's interesting to note that although 2 programmatic EISs are identified, there's many other things that are mentioned in this legislation that are not, for which a programmatic EIS is not identified. So I think it's fair to say that I support the letter. I think it would be beneficial, but I would agree that we need to take a dual path. And And secondly, that I'm not super hopeful about getting ecology to address this through rulemaking to include geothermal when it's not in the bill in two capacities, in two levels of granularity, let's put it that way.
And that reflects the conversations John and I have had. This is one of those ones where it's worthwhile to be hopeful and go ahead and
And
proceed.
there's no negative with failure on that.
Exactly. Yeah, you know, and to be fair, John has identified the elements of a pre-EIS or programmatic EIS already. That was what was in the EIS that was done by BLM. How many acronyms can I throw out in one sentence?
Oh,
Do we have like a fine jar?
I was talking about it. Yeah.
So the issue is that John has provided the backbone of the work already. And it's possible that the person in ecology looking at this goes, well, sure, it's almost a freebie at this point, might as well. On the other hand, you know, the legislation calls for two programmatic EISs, and that's what it funds. And so, you know, the government official may look at that and say, well, I got to do what the legislature said, no more, no less, and we're moving on. So we're not sure how they're going to respond, but we're hopeful, and I think it's worthwhile to pursue. I would caution the commission when we go and talk to our local representatives about this, to keep the focus on geothermal. There's hydro, as you pointed out, there's storage, renewable fuels, there's all kinds of other things. There's advanced modular reactors, there's fusion. So you could make this so broad so quickly that it becomes something that accomplishes nothing. And I would just urge you, if we go and talk to the elected officials, which we urge you to do, and I'll help organize that, that the focus maintain on geothermal only in terms of our discussion. We only wanted to advance one additional thing, not 30.
Can do.
Well, let me just respond to that. I agree with your statement that we should focus on geothermal. But the reason is not because there's not other things to pursue. The reason is because it's got its own cross to bear. Storage really does need attention, and our utility industry, both public and private, need to invest more energy and time in storage, in my opinion. So
having built two storage facilities, the permitting for them is very easy compared
yeah,
to this.
exactly. It's just a separate cross.
Without any programmatic,
Yeah,
you don't
exactly.
need a programmatic EIS for it, is
Right.
what I'm saying. You
Right.
absolutely don't need it.
Yeah, I agree with that. And so that's what I'm saying, it's such a separate issue that conflating the two would be a mistake.
Yeah.
Plus,
Plus, it would divert the focus of the legislators. You want them to go after one particular thing.
Yeah.
And go after it.
and geothermal is a severely underexplored. From this perspective, regulatory compliance is something that is gonna need real attention
And
and
it's
care.
got profound regulatory load on it.
Yeah.
In terms of the permitting process,
Completely agree with that.
especially.
Yeah.
Profound regulatory load.
Okay, thank you for that update. I don't have any more questions, and I think you're looking for a head nod from us.
We don't, we were just updating you because this is a course of action I think staff is gonna take. My recommendation, I would just kind of layer on that. I have the same skepticism that ecology will actually expand the alternatives analysis to do this in these programmatic EISs. But it sets the stage that, well, they declined an opportunity.
Mhm.
So let's do something now in this session.
Right. And so, I'm supportive of the letter.
Okay, great.
I don't know if you've
Fantastic.
heard from Commissioner.
I spoke with Commissioner Grant about it generally on Friday. I sent her the letter with a note that says, don't review it till you're back.
Mhm.
So
Well, I thought we got that letter at the end of September. if I remember correctly.
this letter I just sent out over the weekend.
Oh, okay. Well, I did review it. I responded.
Yeah,
to
you did. You
I
got
thought
it
that, I thought it was I thought you said it took me longer ago.
yesterday.
Well, so I did.
You're so
I got
efficient.
back pretty good then,
You did.
for once. All right.
Interesting,
move
I would
on.
just, one other thing I would add,
Yeah, go ahead.
interesting that, as a school project, Huxley in 2013 did not a formal environmental impact statement, but looks like it's a class project and students do an environmental impact assessment of geothermal at these sites. And so it isn't formally published, it isn't done in a, disclosure in full compliance with SEPA, but it is some interesting that there's been some analysis formally or informally of this site in a variety of areas.
Cool. Where was it? How'd you find that?
Google. I was candidly, when I saw the scoping and I was thinking, okay, there's gotta have been some geothermal EISs in the country that we can talk about what the project elements are. And I can refer to, rather than asking Chris to go write a memo for me about what the elements of a geothermal project are. And basically, so I started Googling, and then I came up first with the PEIS and that the BLM did, and then I found this one later, so.
And I got to tell you, in our earlier research, Andrew unearthed all of that, plus the NEPA documents around the test wells up there. So, a lot of this work has been done by others, and that's nice.
At a
That's
different
helpful.
level of granularity and attention, I'm sure, than what we're.
Yeah, we'll have to pull that out. You'll have to do your own SEPA site specific.
Yep.
BLM is gonna have to do that when they do a leasing, but what they can do though is incorporate by reference, and then the scope of the consultant's work is really to update.
Okay, let's move on to old
Yeah,
business.
thank you.
So there's two items, broadband update and adjudication update. So let's go to the broadband update first.
Andrew, it's all yours.
Good morning, everyone.
morning.
Excited. Good morning. Excited about the Point Roberts broadband project. Things are really starting to move. We heard from our state contact that the direct capital allocation has been approved. So if you recall, there was originally a direct state capital allocation that was going to the port and the county for $225,000 to support broadband work in Point Roberts. And a number of months ago, the PUD and the port and the county got together, and we said, well, in advance of submitting an application to the state broadband office, let's go ahead and ask if we can have that direct allocation directed to the PUD instead. So we made that request, and we just heard back that that was approved. So we'll see a contract come in forthcoming meeting for approval on that. But I wanted to let the commission know that that was approved, and we will be getting an additional $225,000, actually $218,000, because they take 3% for their costs at the state. So we'll have a roughly $218,000 in addition to the state broadband office grant that we've been awarded. So more to come on that. And then today, the county will be reviewing and hopefully approving the matching dollars for the $350,000 to the state broadband grant. And then finally, within your packet today is a resolution asking the commission to grant the general manager the authority to execute a contract with the state broadband office, and that's the big kahuna. That's the one for the 3.5 million, 3.15 million for the broadband project, and that will give us the green light, as you know, to really kick off the project management of this project. So a lot of things moving, and we're excited to get this project rolling. So do we want to wait for the new business to approve that resolution?
Yeah, we do.
Andrew, I just tell you, I signed that approved that as a form this morning.
Thank you. That's all I have from the broadband update.
So, any questions? So I have a question, Andrew. There was in the so of course, good news on Point Roberts. I want to change subject a little bit and ask about BEAD. So what are you hearing and about whether the state's going to split it, do the 80-20, or go for the 100%? What do you know about that? What are your thoughts about whether we'll be having a potential solicitation next year or not for BEAD funding, or will it be 2015?
I've heard some differing comments. I believe the most recent comment was the state was going to go after dollars as soon as possible. And what I do know is that there is a meeting this Thursday with the state broadband office. It's actually geared towards BEAD and identifying project areas and looking for stakeholder input on how to identify those project areas. And so hopefully in that meeting, we'll also be informed of an update on what the state broadband office is planning to do and when we can expect to notice a funding opportunity for organizations like us to apply. So I should have an update soon on that regard. But right now, I'm not sure what exactly the state's planning to do in response to your specific question, unless Chris has heard something otherwise. But I haven't heard anything formal.
No, and I have that meeting on my calendar, and I believe you do too, Andrew. Is that right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And
So,
I do as well. I'm attending it as well.
All right.
Is anybody else, who else would you expect Gina to be there? Folks in the library to be there?
Gina normally would be. We'd have folks from PUD on the call.
Oh, for sure. I'm from in the county. Who do you think will be there?
Maybe the library, for sure, Gina. I don't know who else attends those, Andrew.
Well, this is a special meeting, kind of.
Well, no, it's kind of the broadband for all. It's another extension of that group.
From Wacom, I think that's the team.
I'm wondering, is there anybody else that, okay, so in the BEAD 5-year work plan, there's a reference to the importance of engaging community groups. And I'm wondering if this is an opportunity to start engaging some more community groups as it relates to what we can do in this county. Be just like the previous round, it's a competitive process. And one of the challenges that Whatcom County has is that we're not considered a disadvantaged county. And of course, it's not clear whether we'll be off the list for if there's an 80-20 split. Because we're not disadvantaged, but that's a possibility. But in addition to that, whether we are eligible for funding next year or it's only in the following year, our ability to make a case for a connection to digital equity via organizations will make a difference in how much funding we receive in our community. Now, one could argue that engaging those people too soon would create unrealistic early expectations. The other because the planning is, Chris, I think you made this point, the planning is still underway. The analysis is underway. But the other perspective is that involving people from community groups who are interested in digital equity would be beneficial to help them start climbing the learning curve, to be ready to work with us when we prepare our applications. So that's just a topic I wanted to bring up, and you might think of people that you think would be beneficial to attend. It might be worth reaching out. There's a few people, not a lot, that I've contacted, like the STEM group that I'm a part of. Wacom used to be TAG, a technology alliance group. Now it's STEM is science, technology, and
Engineering, mathematics.
Yeah, engineering mathematics group with a subgroup that's interested in advancing broadband. So I've let those people know. Just bringing it up.
So I think you're right. We need to get them engaged, and the trick is to get them engaged at the right time, because what we're trying to do now is influence the way the state looks at this, obviously to bias them towards, taking a look at Wacom with viable. And I'm just not sure that these advocacy groups at this point would help on that. So, there's kind of that to think about. The other thing to think about is that we will need them 100% behind this for that period of time from when the grant is awarded until we get the last customer hooked up and lit. That's the key time element to have them engaged. Because these are folks that not only help end users with hardware and software, but also provide training and support so they can effectively use the tools that they're given. And that's really critical, especially when you think about communities where English is not the first language. These groups are critical in getting that kind of capacity rolled out into the community. And it's a very focused, they move in, and it's a lot of high touch on the ground time that they spend. So we're familiar with the groups, and so I'll leave that part of the discussion there. The other thing is that even if the state broadband office decides that, gosh, we're only going to go for the socioeconomically disadvantaged counties. And I get that. I mean, there's people who, whole counties where they have less wealth than Blaine. And you got to look at it and say, well, okay, I get it. That'd be a good place to go. The flip side of that is that county doesn't have the capacity to do these jobs. So we have to be ready with our slate of proposals, because I think there'll be a point where it's going to be a mix of, let's target the disadvantaged communities, but to the extent that they don't have anything ready to go, and it may take years to get them up to speed, we need to look for shovel ready projects as well. And
Right.
we need to be on that shovel ready, here you go here. And it does in fact meet disadvantaged, not in a broad sense, but in a very, very local sense. And that's where we're pointed.
Well, and I have spent time with these groups. And there's a statement I made at the telecom workshop, and then again at Wakuda's last technical meetings. And that is that digital equity problems are a hyper local reality. You can have somebody with excellent connectivity living a block away with someone with terrible connectivity who can't afford the connectivity that is being offered them. So you can have, so to do it at a county level granularity is probably a mistake. So that's my opinion. So anyway, enough said for me.
Would you like to move on to the adjudication update?
Yeah.
John?
Filing will occur in April. Is still hearing that. I had a presentation with Robin McPherson from the Department of Ecology a week ago at the American Water Resources Association in Seattle. That went well. She confirmed they're planning on an April filing. Conversations with the Department of Ecology, some of which I'll give in detail in executive session, summary detail in executive session. They are working through a lot of service issues and getting their plan for serving parties throughout the county. The Aquabella adjudication had broken into subbasins, pathways and subbasins. They went subbasin by subbasin approach, and then pathways within it, meaning federal rights, state right, groundwater rights. Right? How do you eat this help from an adjudication process and looking at all the claims? That's a long way from being sorted out, but that's being discussed. I think that may be the focus of some discussions amongst some of the lawyers involved with the preliminary planning. That's what I have.
So we attended the water workshop, myself, Chris, you weren't there,
I
right?
was not able to.
Bill Clark was there. He presented.
And so I feel like this is a good time to just introduce the subject, maybe in commissioner comments. Well, I'll go into more depth on it. Right now, I just want to mention, just to say that I do want to give a debrief on what happened at the water workshop in my comments. But the relating to adjudication specifically, it's fair to say that the whole Wakuda community is looking to welcome PUD as and as a resource to understand the implications of adjudication on municipal water law. And it's not realistic for the entire state to be adjudicated anytime. But there will be a lot of municipal water law tests that get explored that may have may have relevance for the rest of the state. So the Wakuda community is very curious, very interested in our adjudication for that reason.
I would say that in a separate conversation I had with the college officials and Bill Clark. Since the last commission meeting. I raised the issue of the problems of municipal water law. Interpretation by the Department of Ecology in their draft policy 2030. As well as their proposed box to fix and the institutional barriers that those interpretations have on solutions in the basin. And express some of the reasons for that. I fully anticipate litigation around the interpretation of the municipal water law in this adjudication. Whether it's brought by the PUD or municipal governments, cities, exclusion of purveyors such as some water associations. So I fully expect this to be litigated, and the scope of some of the municipal water rights will not be able to be adjudicated until that's done. That'll take 3 or 4 years to go to the courts, get the Supreme Court. It's one of those many multitude of examples of legal issues that will arise in this case that will extend the adjudication process extensively. Having said that, I think there are opportunities for WIRA 1 specific pilot legislation that could facilitate solutions without addressing the broader issues. But it's going to take a lot of work to get it.
So just my observation, again, and this will be my only comment on the water meeting. After the last presentation by Bill Clark, a whole bunch of the general managers came up to me who are very savvy on water issues. And in fact, one of them leads the WOOC on the municipal water law letter that the WOOC put together. And their universal response to me was, "Oh my God, we did not know." So they're standing back kind of aghast. The light bulb came on how big this thing is and why it took so long in the Yakima Basin and why we're not doing 4 or 5 of them simultaneously and marching across the state. That finally everybody got it. It dawned on them.
Interesting.
Yeah, this is a big deal, not just for us, but the whole state.
Okay, well, let's move on in the agenda. And let's move on to new business. We have got 4 items under new business.
The first is with Andrew. Andrew, would you like to talk to us about the Point Roberts resolution?
Good morning. Yes, good to see everyone again. Yes, we're looking for approval of a resolution in your packet, giving the general manager the authority to execute a contract with Washington State Broadband Office. Open any questions?
Do you have questions? Because I don't. Okay. I move we approve resolution number 834, authorizing the general manager to sign agreements for the Point Roberts broadband fiber optic network.
Second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you, commissioners.
Sorry, Andrew, you're giving us good news. We should have had you stick around for longer.
That's okay. Thank you all very much.
Thanks.
The second item, I believe, will be represented by Kurt.
Morning, commissioners. I'm online to request permission to approve a professional service agreement with Performance Information Technologies, and they would be a professional support of our SCADA system. We've used them in the past. They've worked a lot with Paul to help us build our SCADA system here for the PUD. I would say that pretty much every utility has their own unique system that they use. Not unique in the sense of the software, but unique in how it's deployed. And because we have our 3 substations and our 2 water plants, ours is unique in our own way. And Performance IT helps support Paul in deploying our system. We've used them several times in the past. It did expire last year, even though I don't think that we've used them probably since 2019, like really face to face with COVID and everything else that happened. From what I've understand, the Wonderware SCADA software has moved up at least 1 version of software, if not 2. And so there's been some changes in the base software, and so we're trying to just bring Performance IT back in for support and make sure that we keep everything running smoothly. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Well, I don't recall, what's the duration of this agreement?
This one would expire in December 31st of 2026. And
Okay.
this is just the agreement for then we would create a work order from this. There's nothing really attached to this specifically.
There's no money here, but yeah.
Right.
No
We would come
detailed
back
scope of work.
with a scope of work.
I move we approve professional services agreement with Performance Information Technologies.
Second? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Thank
Well,
you.
thank you, Kurt.
Thanks, Kurt.
Thanks, Kurt. I'm not sure who's providing the projects update.
Oh, well, that'll be me too.
Okay, well, welcome back, Kurt.
So I have a few pictures. Trying to share it. All right, see some pictures there?
Not yet.
No, you have a share screen button right down in the, right in the middle of the screen. The bottom of the screen.
Share. Oh, there it is. How about now?
There we go.
Yeah.
There, yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. So one of the first things I want to talk about is we've had divers at Plant 1 cleaning out our intake wells and intake screen rooms, and that's going to be at our Plant 1 on Ferndale Road. And they are cleaning out I don't think dredging is the correct term, but they're all vacuuming, dredging. They're cleaning out the inside of our intake facility. So this first picture is to give you an idea of the scale of what's going on. The first picture, that's a 4 foot by 8 foot sheet of plywood in one of our waste basins. So we had to, we did some previous work where we ran a pipe underneath Ferndale Road, discharge pipe, and then this is a soft hose we connected to it. But that's a 4 foot by 8 foot sheet of plywood of the material coming out of the basins, or excuse me, out of the intake into the basin. And then here's a second picture, and this is the same 4 foot by 8 foot sheet of plywood, and you can see the building beach of sand and sediment we're pulling out of the intake. I think you should be able to see that.
Yeah.
And then I have another picture, and that's still, again, the same sheet of plywood, and now we've got a 10 foot by 20 foot beach of sediment that's come from the inside of the intake facility. And so what's happening is, as the river drops into the screen room for the intake, the water slows down coming out of the river, and then all of the material settles out before it's brought into our treatment areas. And so this continues to build up, and we're kind of changing our method of operations here, where we're actually vacuuming it out as opposed to sucking it into our pumps, which is really hard on the facilities. And one of the other things that the divers did, I don't really have any pictures. We have a PVC blow off system that was installed about 20 years ago that needed a lot of maintenance. And so they replaced all the PVC, and now hopefully we can keep this sediment load a little bit lower than what we're experiencing. So we're gonna figure that out over the next couple years as we try and install, initiate this new system of cleaning out there. Because what will happen basically is if the sediment becomes too much, then it really decreases our flow into the plant, which obviously is going to downstream create a lot of other problems for our process. Any questions on this particular operation?
I have some questions, just because I'm glad you're talking about this. I had noticed on the claims that we spent $50,000 on divers. And so
This is it,
I was going to ask questions about this. So is this annually or is as needed
Well,
to do the clean outs?
it's been kind of an as needed. It's from what I can gather is when we've had divers in the past, we haven't actually got it as clean as we would like. There's been an impact or compacted load in the north end of the intake facility, and typically the divers would enter in the south end. And so what they were doing is working from that south end and moving north, and we would have them only here for 1 to 3 days, and then that would be the end. And then next year or 2 years later, we'd have them back, and they would start from that south end again, and they would never actually get to the north end. And so this time we had the divers for 6 days, and they moved almost all the way to the north end. And so that's why it was definitely a higher than normal charge that we have. And so what we're trying to figure out is if we are going to do this every other year and have them here for about 5 days, 6 days, and then the alternate year just have them do an inspection. We're trying to solidify our process and how we're going to proceed moving forward.
I gotta say, this is heavy abrasive material,
Mhm.
and it normally would have gone through our pumps. And it's gonna damage blades and everything else in the pumps. So yes, we've spent a little more money on the divers up front, but we're getting better head through the whole thing because there's freer flow. And it should improve our O&M cycles on the pumps in old plant 1, which
Great.
is a good thing. We need to do what we can to extend that thing.
And I'm sure you're on the look for technology, like if there's a Roomba designed to clean out the bottom of a pool, equivalent type thing that could potentially.
You can let us know.
I will, maybe somebody needs to design one for us.
There are jets in there that are designed to store this stuff, not big outlets, so.
Yeah.
Those jets that's what the PVC I described as being replaced. We had multiple nozzles that were broken, so they weren't giving a proper pressure. It was more of like leaking water as opposed to jetted water. And so that's we were thinking as part of the problem is that our jet system wasn't working as ideal as we would like.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kurt.
You have some other projects to show us?
Yes, I do actually. This is the next one is just kind of a small one. This is our plant 2 lids for our chemical tanks, and the lids were, I don't even know if they were almost like laminate wood and fiberglass, and they were deteriorating and kind of starting to fall apart. And one of the major problems though is when the tanker truck is almost done emptying from the tanker into our tanks, they'll usually pressurize the load to make sure everything is out of the tanker. And what can happen is the lids can actually pop off, and these lids, the old lids that you're looking at, and can get into the personnel area and become kind of an inhalation hazard. And so David and Devin kind of created and installed this new setup where the lids are secured down. They're not going to pop off if the tanker truck is pressurized. And then the white hose is venting, and so then we installed some venting pipe to the outside so the personnel aren't inhaling the chemicals. And then the black wire is for input to the SCADA system to tell the height of the chemical in the tanks. And that's just a little project, but that's something that we're doing to for personnel safety and for just keep things running well.
That's great.
So that hose like a pressure relief valve on the.
Yeah,
pressure
so the
relief valve?
white hose is just a relief. So if the tanker truck was to kind of burp and then put chemical into the air, then it's just going to vent to the outside, as opposed to you see there's kind of a small little corner of the cinder block wall behind if you were there behind you, there's about a 10-foot by 10-foot area where the operators stand as the tanks are filling.
Is there a pressure relief valve, or is it just ambient pressure?
Ambient pressure, and it's not normally something that where it's really venting into the space. It's more of when the load is coming in.
So the vapor pressure, the chemical is low.
Right.
The only reason there's a vapor is when they're applying pressure to the tank, right?
Right, to make
Okay.
sure that the truck is empty and they've got their whole load out of the truck.
And these are the chemicals that we use for flocculation. So it's not hazardous chemicals. You just want a very high concentration in the air you breathe.
Oh, the next one, this is our cleaning out of the waste basins for plant 2. This was Brian, I believe, mentioned this last meeting. This is just to kind of give you an idea. This is the very beginning. This is the contractor basically making the first entry into the basin. It was a little bit touch and go to begin, but as we move through, you can see that you can see how big the excavators are, how much material we're working out of that basin. And then, there's a pickup truck there. You can see how big that truck is compared to how much material we're moving out of the basin. Getting closer, we're just about there, and that's kind of what we're going to see at the end as we do our basins. All the materials taken out. It's always pictures like this. It's maybe harder to tell. The elevation, I believe, from the soil, from the existing material to what we brought down was about 12 foot overall through that whole area.
And Kurt, do you remember how many cubic yards or how many dump truck loads we had off of there? Must have been a couple hundred truckloads.
I think it was 4,500 cubic yards. Garrett would know for sure, but I think it was around 4,500 to 5,000.
Where does it go? Where do
Do you know where?
Joe Corey.
Yeah, it takes
Okay.
Cuba quarry.
Yeah, it's Hankoop was our contractor, and they own quarries and all kinds of stuff.
Part of the reclamation plan, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when you dig out of a quarry, you need fill again.
Yep.
So this is fill material.
The 5,500 is what it was. 5,500 cubic yards. And then there's another picture. And then the last one is the solar. It's just some rooftop pictures. They're putting in the infrastructure for it, and then starting to install the panels. And then there's another shot. You can see in the background is our control building. This is plant 2, obviously. Then so we got our control building back there, and we're standing on the roof of the maintenance building. And that's the last of the slides that I have.
The one little update on the solar project. We do have the capacity to link the output live to our homepage, and I know Aaron and folks were working on that. I don't know if it's there live yet, but that's the intent.
Nope, it's not there yet, but it'll be up there soon.
Thank you, Kurt.
Thank you, commissioners. Have a good day.
Thank you, yeah,
Me
that's
too.
good news.
So now we have a new item and it's actually mine. So if you'll recall, one of the things that I've got going is we're going to be creating a new power supply and broadband director. That's a new position in the utility. And we're also going to be slightly modifying the AGM operations job description. Turns out creating a new job description and modifying an existing one requires a resolution of the commission by our employment policies.
Mhm.
So what I have before you today is just that. So it's the resolution, the pay bands, the job descriptions. And at this point, I'd be delighted to answer any questions for you.
I've got it.
I got it. Okay, so I'll move, we approve resolution number 835, amending administrative employees compensation policy.
Yeah, I'll second that. So all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you, commissioners. That concludes our new business. Operations report is Brian. I know he's here.
Good morning, Brian.
Right, good morning.
We can hear you, but we can't see you.
For some reason, I'm not getting video, so I will. That's interesting.
There we go.
There
We
we
see
go.
something. We see white right now.
Oh, well,
Like a
I can
white-
talk and we don't have to look at me.
All right, Brian, what you got for us?
I've got 3 items. It won't take very long. The first is I wanted to just update you commissioners on an incident we had last Thursday night at water plant number 1. About between 9 and 9:30 on Thursday night, we basically had an electrical fault in a PLC panel, a programmable logic controller panel. The result of which was we dropped all the high head pumps in plant 1. So they weren't pumping water. This resulted in, a alarm situation. Obviously, we've got standby personnel, both water and electric, that responded. Phillips 66 obviously gave us a call because they had lost or dropping water pressure. The end result is our guys responded. They found the problem, fixed the problem, and got the pumps up and running again. And it took about 3 hours total, I believe. But in the interim, plant 2 picked up the slack and was providing water to all our customers out in Cherry Point. Phillips 66 did not lose any processes at the refinery. It was just a low pressure situation. So they were slowly being starved of water. Let's put it that way. I received an email from one of the Phillips 66 staff after the incident, basically said, thank you very much for the quick response, and indicated there was no damage or, like I said, loss of process at the refinery. But I'm bringing this incident up just because it's just another indication that plant 1 is tired. We're starting to have these isolated problems that we didn't have in the past. And so, maintenance issues at plant 2 are starting to escalate. And so, as we've discussed before, and as you'll see played out in the budget, we're going to need to, at some point, rebuild plant 1 to bring it up to modern day standards so it's reliable. In this case, we have the second water plant, and so we can keep going. But it just points out here again, we need both water plants to back each other up. Glad to answer any questions about that incident if you have any, commissioners.
I don't have any questions, but big thanks to the on-call team that fixed that so quickly.
Yeah,
we
like
had-
in the past. In the
Okay.
past, go ahead, Brian.
Oh, no, go ahead, Commissioner.
In the past, when we've had this kind of a fault, I've looked for an after action report, which I've had a chance to review in the past. I'd like to see that again for this situation. There is this, as you brought up, the general wellness and age of plant one, I get that, but I'd like to get into more, I'd like to be exposed to more specifics, but I'm recognizing that that takes a little bit of time to be able to study and understand what happens. So I look forward to getting that information when it's available.
Put that together and provide it to Chris to distribute to you commissioners.
And I just would remind the commission that the policy issue here is whether or not to replace plant one, and if so, how. So we are doing an after action report to level of formality that's appropriate for the problem. And when you find a panel that's smoked and it's past its due date, you don't need to do a whole lot of investigation. So we're going to be putting together a report.
Okay, great.
Second item I have, and it's one I've already mentioned in the past, but I'll just confirm it today, is that we ended the Bonneville rate period September 30th. And then upon receiving the Bonneville power bill for the month of September, I was able to determine how much power we purchased from Bonneville for fiscal year 2023. And as that turns out, that amount was 26.2 average megawatts. The significance of that is that amount is about a megawatt short of what our current allocation of tier one power is from Bonneville under the current contract. And as I've discussed before, fiscal year 23, Bonneville is going to use that year, this year, that just concluded, for setting our allocation for the new contract starting 2028. So the long and the short of it is, unless we can get an adjustment upward of that 26.2 amount, that will be our base allocation in 2028. And obviously we've already had one discussion with Bonneville about reasons for increasing that amount. We'll have continued discussion going forward before that amount's set and granted.
I can also add to that, Brian, that no matter what we do, I guarantee you there's probably going to be at least 20 other utilities in Washington and probably 60 in the Northwest that are making the same request. My load was low because, and you need to increase it. And that doesn't create any new dams. You know, what it does is it causes a fight for the reallocation. There's no process in this proceeding to appeal your high water mark. So I suspect that what Bonneville is going to do is just reject all of them out of hand and say, no, it is what it is, and move on. So we're pushing hard not to have that outcome, but I don't want any unrealistic expectations with the commission.
Is there a letter being drafted?
We're not to that point yet. Brian's just got it and had the initial conversation. So the first thing you do is you ask. And then failing that, you get a letter from me to Administrator Hairston. And then failing that, we would bring you guys in and it would be a different discussion.
I just want to make sure I understand that really clear. So we were very close to our allocation using what we had allocated for tier one.
And what happened was during this year, we had a shutdown of P66. And it was,
Right.
yeah, and that's not a normal year. That's every, I don't know, Brian, every 4 or 5 years they do that. And it happened to be this year. So now we're set. That's our high water mark for the whole next contract period. And the reason they picked this year was a good one. And I do fully support it. It was so that the big guys didn't have a chance to game it. And think about all of those PUDs just in Washington, but they also cover Oregon, Idaho, parts of California. I mean, Bonneville covers a lot of land. But you think about all the ones that have data centers. If they can talk to the data center and say, hey, if you can just move it in 2 months, you'll get on our high water mark. And so what they were trying to do was avoid time to game it. And I appreciate that. That was, their attempt at keeping everybody honest. And, this is one where, gosh, the luck of the draw, we ended up with this happening. If it had been any other year, we would have been fine.
Right.
So now we're a megawatt short, average megawatt short.
Got it. Thanks.
Yeah. Like, another letter we discussed in this meeting, we gotta give it our best college try, so.
Right.
Last thing I have,
Let's do that.
commissioners, is just a note of interest. October 14th, solar eclipse on the west coast. Last one, I think, was 2017, but the significance for us in the power industry is that there'll be significant impact on generating resources, particularly in California. When that solar eclipse rolls through on the 14th, state of California, the CAISO, the California Independent System Operator, estimates they're going to lose about 9,374 megawatts of solar energy.
Gigawatts.
Wow.
Yeah,
For a few minutes.
I know, it's just momentarily, like,
Well, 3 to 5 minutes on each panel. Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
But overall,
And-
they have to plan for that, and they have to provide alternate resources to back up. And that's, so they're gonna have to rely on hydro and thermal to pick up that slack. And one of the impacts on us is it raises power prices in the Northwest when that happens, because we're selling into that market, so.
Right, and a couple of minutes is not a big deal in terms of total energy. But the fact of the matter is that you bringing on a peaker for a couple of minutes is also not exactly the most efficient operation either.
Well, no, and typically what they're gonna wanna do is they're gonna wanna bring the complete reserve of the 9 gigawatt reserve at least a half an hour in advance. And that allows the system to ride through without any frequency disturbances.
Right,
So that's the plan.
and that's a lot of money.
And it is, and these are must-run units, so that means that the market has to compensate the operators for, essentially taking the unit out of mothballs, running it all the way up, running it back down and putting it in cold standby. And that's what you have to do.
That's
That-
incredible.
That's the dilemma that we've got with interruptible renewables. Why I like geothermal so much.
And it's a double whammy. You lose generation, but you add load because all those rooftop solar units are impacted as well, so.
Right. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Okay, so while we have Brian, I want to bring up PPC meetings last week. And there was a lot of what I can only characterize as upset over the lack of clarity coming from Bonneville Power on the rate structure for tier 1 and tier 2. Obviously more for tier 2 because it's more of a question mark and more fear over how high rates could be under tier 2. And I heard some language about lack of confidence, lack of trust, and leaving it all up to Bonneville as far as what the pricing will be particularly for tier 2. So I want to see what you guys are hearing and thinking about this subject. So please tell me what you think.
Well, I think, you've seen the latest interim settlement offers on the Snake River dams, the studies and the remediation work. And that's $2 billion. That's $2 billion. And the idea that this would come from somewhere other than ratepayers is ridiculous. And so everybody's, oh, great, we've got all these studies, we've got these fish ladders, we've got these, other remediation things. It's $2 billion. And that's not in Bonneville's rates today, and it is tomorrow. So, whether
It could be tomorrow.
no, they got to recover it somewhere. Not it could be, will be. No could, will. It will be tomorrow.
Oh, you're talking about their existing programs.
No. When you look at the settlement that was just announced about 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago now, because I took a week off, but
Yeah, help me with this. I'm kind of a little confused.
yeah, there was a settlement that was reached on all the studies that need to be done and some of the remediation that needs to be done prior to any decision to remove the dams on the lower Snake River. And everybody was like, yay, you know, from the people who want to preserve the dams was like, oh, thank God, you know, we got a chance to actually look at this and figure out what the costs are. To the people who are, you know, anything we can do now is a good thing. Let's do it all. And both parties, both sides were really happy with it. It involves state, the federal government, and I forget what judiciary body. I don't know if it was the Ninth Circuit or who oversaw it, but it was the people who oversaw the buyout,
Yeah,
the
it's probably the
biological
Western
opinion.
District. I don't know, Western District.
Yeah. So everybody was like, yay, but the bottom line is it's $2 billion. And that is new money that has to flow from Bonneville to all this activity. Bonneville gets that money from its customers. So it has to be distributed among tier 1 and tier 2, because tier 3 is just market. So the, you know, that to expect certainty from Bonneville when they can suddenly have a $2 billion charge dropped on them that they have to recover from their customers in rates. You know, that's what's causing everybody this kind of anxiety and angst. You know, that issue aside, what's the hydro year going to look like? We're going into an El Nino precipitation event.
So which means low.
Maybe. I mean, that nobody knows. And is it going to be high or low in California? And that'll cause market sales to go up or down. Do you have to buy off of that market, or can you sell into that market? These are all the uncertainties that Bonneville faces. So, you know, they'll look at you and they'll say, well, gosh, given all of these caveats.
What do you want us to do?
Well, no, given all these caveats, we could give you a rate. But understand that any number we give you, if you can modify it by these caveats, and you get a really wide error band around it. And people don't like that because it's hard to plan.
Right.
I agree. I don't like that. It's hard to plan. And I think that's a lot of what you were hearing from the PPC people. They were folks like me who look at this and go, well, shoot, what are our rates going to be next year? Because we're a cost recovery organization.
Yeah.
Bonneville's the same.
What I was confused by is that, so in your presentation right now, you're describing it as something which is understandable. And
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, and then you're also showing some degree of compassion for Bonneville's circumstances.
Yeah.
What I was surprised by at PPC is the amount of disappointment and statements about lack of transparency that I heard from PPC staff. So can you guys help me understand that? Why are PPC staff so annoyed with Bonneville?
I think you really have to ask PPC on that. And Brian, unless you've heard otherwise, feel free to chime in.
Staff, and I think this is just Brian's perspective. You have large players at PPC, some large West Side utilities that in Bonneville's policy on the new contracts, they did not give everything the bigger utilities, the load growth utilities wanted. They wanted more credit for load growth. They also wanted some flexibility in terms of the resources they're applying to load. So I think there's angst there, particularly amongst the big guys. It's a big tent. It's hard to please everyone, I guess. That's what other than that, yeah, I would agree with Chris. Just I would approach staff and see what they know, because they deal with Bonneville on a daily basis that we don't. So
Yeah. I mean, so
Well, and I think the president of PPC is John Harlow right now, if I remember that correctly. Or he's some.
Scott. Oh,
No, I mean, the one that it's not staff there.
oh, you mean
The-
determine what we have?
Yeah, and
Of the executive board.
there's an organization that adds 5,000 to 9,000 customers per year. It's just one county. So, you know, these guys are looking at it and saying, well, gosh, that means that every new customer that I get, which is thousands a year, is in tier 2 or tier 3. And they didn't like that answer at all. And again, that goes right back to what I was talking about, gaming it. You know, and it's you take a picture in time, and that's kind of what it is, and everybody lives with it. And nobody was happy with it, including me. But
So
I
now,
also understand why they
now
did.
you're making me wonder, putting it all in context. On this contract, it makes me realize that, maybe we shouldn't be the most disagreeable customer of Bonneville, given the fact that we're suffering a lot less than other public power customers.
I would say it won't make any difference, so feel
Okay.
free to be disagreeable. It won't matter. We're that small voice in the woods
Yeah,
and, or maybe the mosquito buzzing in the ear. I don't know how to put it, but
but even a mosquito can be annoying at some
it can be. And
Yeah.
my approach to this is approach Bonneville as a bunch of professionals and make a request. And if they don't, give us what we want, escalate as is reasonable and just maintain professionalism and keep going.
Uh-huh.
And that's the way to have their attention, but not irritate them.
Mhm.
I don't mind being annoying as long as I'm not irritated.
Mhm.
So anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Okay, thanks for that understanding, because I left that this last PPC meeting a little confused over that degree of conservation, and I will follow up with staff. I have decided to travel. I haven't traveled the last 2 PPC meetings. There's a November meeting, which November 1st and 2nd, which I will be traveling for. So, and I think there's some things that can be accomplished better in person. So. Alrighty,
Is that, have you gone on to commissioner?
Yeah, is that
reports?
your commissioner report?
no, I'm not, no, I kind of touched on it, but I've got. Do you want to go first or should I go?
You go ahead,
Okay,
since you kind of.
So I'll roll right into it, yeah,
Yeah.
so, of course, November, talk a little bit ahead, November busy month, will be PUD meetings, there's the going away party for George Pond. So I'll be attending the November PUD meetings, and then there's a, broadband meeting, which I'm planning to attend remotely, to talk about NOAA's proposal. So, I think I want to spend some more time with staff. So that, and then talk to the commission about where we're going into, responding to NOAA and their proposal. I want to make sure it's a coordinated response from us on that subject. So we'll definitely have time to do that.
Yeah, and I think we had a brief discussion about that.
Yeah,
and
and yeah, that's
There's,
very helpful.
there's circumstances where the NOAA proposal or parts of it could be incredibly useful to counties like, I'm gonna mispronounce this, Minnesota,
Sure, yeah.
where they just don't have the staff. They don't have an Andrew. They don't have, and they have issues.
And hopefully bringing in, yeah. Variety of different opportunities, including bringing tribes into the fold a little bit, into a coordinated effort on a statewide basis. So there's real potential there. Okay, so as far as I talked about PPC, this previous week, and I wanted to talk a little bit more about the water workshop.
Thank you.
So, in summary, I left that meeting pretty depressed. Luckily, I had a weekend to dance tango to lift my spirits afterwards. So I have to say that Dave Christensen's presentation on the future outlook of certain watersheds was pretty sad. The good news is that we're not the only watershed in trouble, but we are one of the top 2, according to Dave Christensen. He talked about us and the Dungeness as the watersheds that are in the most dire situation as a result of climate change. And very realistic possibility of no water in the river at some point in the future. And that's, that's bad news. And so that kind of coordination that we need to attack those problems is very substantial. And we are so far away from that kind of coordination in this basin. We have a lot of good people in this community who care, and all our local governments and tribal governments are very dedicated to address this problem, but we don't have that level of coordination necessary to do these big capital projects to protect the river. And by thereby protecting our water supply as well. So, I'm concerned, and the most obvious near-term step to address those, to clear the pathway for, to clear the regulatory pathway for pursuing those solutions is a fix to the foster legislation. And I was also sad and disappointed by the level of competency that I saw in our legislators as far as understanding the foster, the impetus for a foster fix, and having a pathway for a foster fix. And that concerns me too. And there's no lack of support for this at our PUD. There's no lack of support for this at PUD. But I'm just worried about our legislature. And so go ahead, Chris.
I just want, for the folks who weren't in the meeting, the legislature that was actually there speaking was one of the members of the foster task force. So this is the people that you would
We should have known the
expect.
most.
You would
Yeah.
expect them to know the most about it and be very facile with the facts and competent. And I share your frustration, Commissioner.
Yeah,
Can I say something?
and motivated, yeah.
So this is why at our last meeting, I wanted to put a big punctuation mark on water being a priority at Wakuda. And you said, I think, we have lots of people in this community that care, but I don't think we have lots of people in this community that are aware of the dire, urgency that this needs to be addressed, because I don't see it. I don't see it from, other organizations.
I think I understand your point. You're saying that if we need to change what's happening in Olympia, we really need to rally here in this community.
Yeah.
And
I would, offer some advice that John's given me a number of times. And that is that, you don't have to fix the foster problem for the whole state, only this watershed. Yeah. And that is perhaps doable. And I think, whether it happens inside adjudication or in some second proceeding, I think it's got to happen.
for example, there's another thing that's related to this, significantly smaller issue, and that's the water banking law, explicitly excluded walking pond.
Well,
And it was because of population related calculations. But again, it's a small thing, but the
So-
thing is, we gotta do some special purpose legislation probably for our basin.
well, so the water banking law, what they did was they allocated money to ecology to help different counties set up water banks.
Mhm.
And then to administer those water banks. There's nothing in there that prevents Whatcom County from starting up and running its own water bank. In fact, I think the
Right.
Ag Water Board is talking about doing just that for the agricultural interests in the watershed. Now, how that runs afoul or doesn't run afoul of the foster fix, I don't know. There's everything's
No,
tied
foster,
together.
I don't want to distract. The foster fix is the big thing that we need to work on.
But I mean, if you're banking water, you have to withdraw and put back in at the same point in the same condition, same point in time. And so you can't bank it from farmer A and then 3 months later deliver to farmer B. That would be a violation of the foster decision. So water banking and the foster decision are intimately intertied. Yet you got to solve them. You have to solve the foster decision problems before you can really do
Yeah,
effective
yeah.
water banking.
Yeah, it's the bigger, for sure, the bigger issue.
Yeah.
And so, Joe Timmons is coming to the PUD.
November 13th, I think, or 11th.
Yeah.
I don't have it on my
Yeah,
calendar.
we
but-
talked about it in the last meeting,
Yes.
and Christine couldn't make it, but I don't know if you can. And maybe we should notice.
Mhm.
Because, I think it would be a good idea for us to at least mention the foster fix at that meeting on the need for it. And, just presented a unified, cohesive thing about how important it is as well.
From an administrative point of view, then, I would suggest if you want to have more than one commissioner here, we do notice it. And the purpose of the meeting that we told, Representative Timmons was to tour our facilities. So I would suggest an orientation in here that lasts a few minutes, and maybe we get a few of these issues. And then we let him go with the operations folks and have a direct tour of the facilities.
Yeah, and it could be we do another event. I mean, we may not want to cram everything into one
Yeah, that's
session.
probably good.
Yeah,
Do it separate, yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
We don't want to overwhelm.
yeah.
It strikes me
He's
that,
been, sorry,
it strikes me that in hearing this, that all of our legislators need to be teed up with more in-depth understanding and knowledge of the problem.
Mhm.
Whether that's hiring a lobbyist to educate them, arranging for Sarah Mack to meet with them and educate them. Having, a sit down luncheon or something to go over our issues with adjudication where we see, it may be a more focused discussion with all the legislators to understand our needs and try to get them to coalesce about what's going on with the PUD, because it strikes me that whoever the legislative staff aren't watching your interests at the legislature. I see that in the Clean Energy Act. I see that in discussing these issues at the state level, that they're not understanding what municipal water law is that's been going around in utilities, and not just for Washington PUD. So there may
Across the
be a
board.
way to really get them to tune in on what the PUD is doing and have them effectively have monitor legislation, whether it's using PUD as lobbyists or educating their legislative assistants uniquely. But just showing up at PUD day or going down and talk to a legislator doesn't seem to be as effective as an education focused.
So John, why don't you and I work together and put something together that we can get in front of the commissioners quickly.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be very complex. But I think we can do some pretty effective stuff locally. And I would suggest, Jamie, you're our lead on water issues. And this one be focused largely on water. So if you don't mind,
yeah,
Commissioner, can I work directly with?
and I'll support Jamie too.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I think that kind of captures the thing that that's why I was so happy about Andrew and Kurt's good news and that meeting, so to balance the meeting out.
It's good to have good news.
But yeah, I felt kind of somber after, the water workshop, and, it's better to be honest about what our reality is, so.
I wish I could have gone, but I didn't need any more depression.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I was glad I had. the
Eyes
weekend.
wide open.
I found the
Literally
thing
on
uplifting.
Friday, I went to Seattle and I spent the whole weekend dancing. So there we go. It was a good way to balance my week. So.
I almost feel like I did a presentation last week at Mission, and I kind of took it as a metaphor to describe the issues because this was for non-water. My first slide on the Nooksack water adjudication, Chris has seen the slide. How does the NFL, WNBA, and the MLB get a collective bargaining agreement with 32 plus owners and over 1,000 players in the minor leagues? You cannot get unanimity. And I went through all the circumstances: cheating teams, cheating players, performance enhancement drugs. You don't report concussions. You don't, you got unpaid college players. I mean, all of the issues that are in the sports world that can't get agreements and lead to strikes, you can correlate to the problems. I says you do not have a settlement with 1,000 people at the table. You have to have a leader. Same thing with this commission talked about last year. We have a leader who has the political pull juice to pull people together, can move the legislature, can move the governor's office, can move in the federal delegation for money, and pull this together. And you need to get there. So it is a major problem that's going to take years to solve. And I took in this presentation and in others communications, I took this commission's comments last week about we have a common enemy. And that's climate change. I mean, we all have that. There will not, what good is having to see your water right on the river?
If there's no river.
If there's no river. It is of no value. And so until we can get to the point of understanding that, it doesn't matter what the agricultural wants, how many berries they want. If there's no water in the river for berries, let alone for fish or any other uses. And so trying to coalesce people around that to push that.
Yeah, and it's worth me bringing up at the water workshop, I asked this question about climate changes that to Dave Christensen, this is that. So how do we all apportion the responsibility for climate change? And I said it's completely inappropriate to put the burden of climate change on the tribes, of course. But the reality is we're all experiencing. So we're all going to have shared difficulty from it. And so I raised that at the water workshop. And you know, Dave had nothing to say basically.
Well, he doesn't, he's not gonna take on the tribe, he's not gonna do it, but the sheer reality of it is, again, the tribes have the senior water right. They're gonna control, from that perspective, they may control everything in the river on the adjudication with the senior right. Their right may not be adjudicated for decades in the schedule that they have on the issues of. But if there's no water in the river, what good is their right? So if they want a solution, they're gonna have to engage in a way that has water for other users that are joining in the basin. Because those parties are gonna want to step up and support capital expenditures through the legislature, through the federal delegation, because if the rest of the community doesn't support politically the solutions in the basin, there isn't gonna be water because the tribes aren't gonna be able to develop the projects alone.
Mhm.
And so there has to be a way for the parties to come together.
Mhm.
And
to me, climate change is a good, common challenge. Yeah, and that's kind of what I was, what I tried to explore at the water workshop. It's fair to say that Welcome PUDs, for over its history, almost all of our revenue, all of our margin that is paid for staff, that is paid for this building, that's paid for everything, is derived from fossil fuel revenue. We have to accept our story. We can't ignore it. What that means, I don't know how to translate that into meaning.
but I would say we are
We are a
agency,
fossil fuel organization.
but we are an agency of society.
Yes,
Because the reliance on fossil fuels
Sure,
isn't
sure.
because of us. We are a result of the society's reliance.
sure. I agree.
So.
That's all.
Question for you?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I talked about.
So in executive session, I'll talk about a minor window
That's enough.
of hope,
Jamie.
a minor window of hope if some of this.
Okay, I'll have a question for you during executive sessions. No WIRA board meeting, so that was going to be one of my things that I would be doing soon. I'm going to approach this with curiosity. You and I talked about it just briefly. It's disappointing to me that there is no WIRA board meeting because
I sure.
I feel like we only have them every, how many times? 6 times a year?
I think, you know.
Yeah, so, and I feel like I'm just getting my feet underneath me as a commissioner to start sharing and, you get a feel for how that board works. And I don't know how the work is getting done. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, like we meet for an hour and a half, we talk over some, the high overarching, like how's the work happening? And because I don't understand how the work is happening and I'm on the board, like I feel useless, left out of the process and unaware of like how this work plan is shaping up, so anyway, I know that you're not in charge of that. I just want to express my frustration.
I can help
that's
you understand that though.
Okay.
And Rebecca can as well, so, we can do that now, or we can do it offline.
Okay,
Just
well,
take a few
who's
minutes.
doing the work?
So the WIRA board has a whole bunch of different organizations that are attached to it, some of which have very competent and capable staff,
Uh-huh.
especially the tribes. So they've got significant natural resources departments. The county has significant staff pointed at this. And that's about it. The WIRA board though itself also the number one function they do is allocate grants.
Mhm.
And those grants go out to various organizations that then sub-granted out to consultants typically.
Mhm.
And that's where the work is done. So it's the combination of the few projects that are being done by these staffs and then all of the grant projects that are being done under the administration of the WIRA board. That's where the work actually gets done.
Okay. Yeah, I still feel useless.
Mm.
Like, I feel like we don't have, I feel like we don't have much of a say.
There's not a lot of traction there.
No, and this is we're working on a 5-year plan, right?
Right.
And like I think I was able to speak once during all of the meetings
Yeah.
involving the 5-year plan, and water is such a huge, important issue right now. And anyway, and I feel like other people look to us for advice on, water issues, and our own county doesn't look to us.
By the way, it's not, I'm on the EDI board, and we haven't had an EDI board meeting in a very long time.
Yeah, they call them when funding is needed.
And when I was on the watershed management board, I expressed the same concern.
Okay.
And I think that, in my opinion, the county staff, county executive, county staff have kind of steered the ship for a lot of these boards. And why have them be countywide boards of local government and have one local government steer the ship? Doesn't feel right. But it's what it is.
Well, and that's why we moved to the where we've got the local government caucus and the fish caucus.
Right.
And actually, I am the leader of the local government caucus now.
Mhm.
So, that it was kind of recognition of that problem and how do you get after it? Now, that still doesn't give us a lot of traction.
Mhm.
I'm not disputing that.
Yeah.
But I do think that the 5-year plan that we've got that you will be seeing on the board is a really good one. And the issue is going to be how much more funding can we attract? How centralized can we make it? And what projects are we going to try and tee up? So you can have a work plan that's fairly broad. And for instance, somebody comes up with, gosh, we should do a 2-dimensional model of the river flow. And it should be from the estuary to the confluence of the 3 forks. Oh, someone else wants it up the middle fork. That kind of thing, some of that grant funding could funnel through there. So
What's also interesting is that there's not many elected at the watershed management board. There's us at the PUD, there's the county executive, there's the mayor, Bellingham, and one small cities caucus. And I've always wished, and we can't say what should happen, but I've always wished that a tribal councilman should be present from the Nooksack and the Lummi Nation to make it more of a board.
Rebecca's dying to talk, and I think Merle is usually there.
Yes.
Hi,
Merle's on the line.
sorry, I really do I think I need to step in here, and I'm actually at home today, so I don't have a camera. But bear with me. Let me just mute something here really quick. Sorry about that. Just I don't want to belabor this, but I just want to be real clear that for Jamie, because you haven't really had a long indoctrination to the watershed planning effort that started way back in the early 90s. There are several staff teams that are working on they're kind of they're on the ground and running, and that is the watershed staff team and the salmon staff team. I attend both of those meetings. Watershed staff team meets on a monthly basis. The salmon staff team meets twice a month. And the salmon staff team is made up of primarily the tribes, the county, WDFW, and a few other people. The PUD does not have any projects, but we are involved because we help review all of the grants that these other agencies are pursuing and help support them. That's the bottom level. That's the worker bees, I guess we can call it that. Then you go up to the watershed management team. That's a middle level policy people. And again, a lot of these people overlap in these meetings. And then you go up to the WIRA 1 Watershed Management Board, which you are a representative for. And you are correct. They meet every other month or try to meet every other month. We're in a process right now of updating the strategic plan for the WIRA 1 Watershed Management Board. And it was decided this month, or we were supposed to have a meeting. It was canceled because the work on the actual strategic plan is kind of wrapped up with all the other meetings that we're having right now. So, you know, we're gonna work on getting that meeting up again and running. The local government caucus also decided that because of all of the things that are going on right now with trying to get the grants and all this stuff that's going on. So it's in a process right now at this time of year. It's very dynamic. So don't get too frustrated because there will be a meeting and there will be some decisions. We don't want to take the elected officials, which is what the Watershed Management Board is. It's the elected officials of the Watershed Management Plan Group. And we want to make sure that their time is spent efficiently. So we're not going to ask the mayor of Bellingham. We're not going to ask Sat Paul, the county executive, or you, or the tribes who are involved on that Watershed Management Board. And their tribal staff is very involved. So just, I do ask that, we're going through a little bit of a transition period here, and we have a lot, they have a lot going on. The PUD is there to help support whatever we can with any of these decisions. So I'm sorry, but I just needed to speak out because I've been attending all of these meetings, as has Steve Jilk.
Yeah.
And yeah, so.
Thank you,
Just-
Rebecca. That's actually really helpful because, I sometimes don't even know where my position is there. Like I said, I gotta speak one time.
Yeah, and it's important that we do have a person there, and I appreciate the fact that you are it. And I was as surprised as anyone that, oh, we're not going to have the Watershed Management Board this month. But I think it's because the update to the strategic plan is going along. It's going well, but it's just not ready to roll out to that high level of people to take that time. That, if we don't have anything for them to approve, we don't want to waste their time. I guess that's my point. Yeah.
I know that you're not the person that sends out those notices, but it came
Yep.
as just like a calendar cancellation with no
Yep.
detail whatsoever.
Yeah.
So it was.
That's why I wanted to say something, because
Yeah.
I kind of, know the backstory a little bit. So
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for letting me speak.
Thanks, Rebecca.
And then my only other thing for it, it's not report. I don't know if it's a report, but there's not been a lot of social media posts, and we have talked about things to add. One of them was in regard to the Point Roberts broadband fiber. We wanted to do a quick little blip about that and tie it hopefully to our website. And then we had talked a little bit about an article for how we are supporting water associations during the drought. And anyway, so I don't know if I can help with either of those. I would be more than happy to. I know that it's not like we have a person, right, that has lots of time to do that, but just something that I noticed. And then something I need to ask you. Can I, as a commissioner, can I share on my own Facebook that, follow the PUD, okay, I'll go ahead and do that. We only have 5 followers right now. And I think there's some apprehension on my part to even put out.
That's not a campaign.
Okay. Okay.
It's unrelated to any, just saying, if you want to hear more about the PUD.
Follow here. Okay, perfect.
So,
Thank you.
Commissioner, I just want to let you know on that Point Roberts broadband, we've worked with the port, and including while I was gone, and have just finalized a really detailed update of where the Point Roberts project is. And the intent is to get that hung on our website and have a notice on the Facebook page.
Linking it there.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
So Just haven't got there yet.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
I
And I
got back
would-
yesterday.
To your list of possible topics, once we get the scoping letter out, geothermal.
Yeah.
That's something to post and to have a paragraph of what we're doing about geothermal.
I forgot one thing. October 19th, Tuesday, Kaylee Galloway, first of all, Kaylee Galloway sent me and Christine the latest version of a resolution. I responded separately, of course, that they're hoping to discuss today in county council. And she's going to present, on broadband at small cities, and she wants me there, in person, emotional support to be there. And technical support if needed. So I'm attending the next small cities meeting on October 19th. I just want to get approval to do that.
Yes.
That's not part of my normal.
Now, I normally attend those.
Yeah.
So I mean, and I'm well aware of what Kaylee's up to and highly support.
Yeah, I know you. Yeah.
As an aside, if it comes up, it's not to bring. Andrew and I have gone back with the county staff and council about the franchise, countywide franchise for broadband. We received from the county a form that we think was industry generated that they're using, but it was really geared towards ISPs and private entities, not a partner in trying to get broadband facilities spread throughout. And then we saw that in the term, the length of the franchise to some financial commitments that were required. So in speaking with the county attorney, I said, we have a different approach. We spent quite a bit of time negotiating the water and electrical franchise. They go countywide. This is really like the electrical franchise. It's mostly dark fiber can be hung on poles. I asked to speak to Tyler directly because there's policy discussions about it. I had heard that they were going to take a different approach. I didn't want them to treat us like a private retail. So had the conversation last week with Tyler Schroeder. That's going back through. I conveyed, we're a partner. We've endorsed the efforts of Councilmember Galloway. Broadband that triggered my recollection of that conversation. So doubt it'll come up for you, but I want you to know in the background, there's discussions about how we might best format a countywide franchise to allow us to deploy broadband without having to get right of ways. And all the rest of just one.
Yeah. And I read your memo on that, and yeah, it's very helpful. No comments on it except some supportive of
So
that.
we're pursuing.
I'm finished.
Okay. So should we move on then to the well, I guess we have a second public comment period and then we'll move on to executive, but any public comment?
None in the room.
No, I would Andrew.
Okay, great.
None
So what was
online.
that second? Okay.
Hmm?
No public comment then for today, but let's move on to the executive session.
5-minute break.
We'll take a 5-minute break, but let's we're gonna talk about water rights and some other general
And some
matters.
general litigation matters, it'll probably could be more like 45 minutes, 30 to 45 minutes, no actions anticipated out of this.
Okay,
It depends on how much discussion.
Yeah.
5-minute break and
sure, 10:40, 10:50 is when we'll come out. Or we can come out sooner too.
we can come out soon.
Yeah.
All right.
No actions anticipated.
Yeah.
All means.
It's 10:41. And we are ready to adjourn, but there's one item that
I'd like.
I'd like to, oh, go
This is meant to
ahead.
be in the manager's report and.
Yeah.
it was overlooked.
It was over.
No
My
action.
apologies. Yeah.
No action.
So we had contemplated getting a management consultant to come on board. And we had talked to a local fellow. Have you talked to him yet?
No,
Okay. So the issue was I've talked to him and Commissioner Grant has talked to him. And, you know, our conclusions were, yeah, okay, nice guy, interesting product, but it's going to be expensive. So two things we think need to happen. One is that both of you may want to talk to this individual, and we probably do want to talk to, you know, solicit other vendors.
Mhm.
The advantage this guy has is he's local, but he's not cheap. This is going to be a, you know, long-term investment. I've looked at the product. And I've got to say that it looks like a solution in search of a problem. So this is a management consultant that typically, you know, they've got a method they go through and an outcome, and they kind of, you know, fit that on organizations. If that is a great fit, then go for it. I'm not sure it is for us.
Yeah, I was a little unclear
Me
in
too.
the proposal, like what, and you know, there were these 3-hour workshops and there was like 4 of them and that wasn't what I was envisioning for us. I was envisioning some sort of facilitated, maybe 1-2 day, like, anyway, that wasn't what I was envisioning. So.
And I was with you on that. That was what I was envisioning was, you know, a 1 or 2 session offsite, very small facilitated meeting. And so the only thing I wanted to bring up was if you want, we can get you in touch with